Setting it up now, and then we will kick this off. There we go. We should be good to go. So again, welcome. This is Dr. Rhonda Farrell, the CEO of Global Innovation Strategies. This is being live streamed to our various social media feeds. And today we're in for such a treat because we're preparing our audience for what we're going to be discussing in our next session, which is really putting organizational excellence into practice. So here, I'm going to rediscuss what we did in our final session before we took our summer break, where you got these little nuggets of spotlight on strategy. So again, organizational excellence is the DNA, the heartbeat, the glue, the motivational rocket fuel that will enable your organization to go to faster, further, and together. So we wanted, not only do we want to create momentum, we want to create a solid baseline of practices, processes, technology, and a people culture that enables the organization to 10x plus. When we think about excellence, not only are we going up through a cultural shift, but we're really offering the opportunity for our leaders and our workforce to not only get on the bus, in the right seat in the bus, but to try to understand what is the transportation mechanism that you all are going to use to be able to get to that 10x, 50x, 100x stage. And so excellence is really the fabric, the common dialogue, the framework that we use to get there. Operational excellence in particular focuses again on this holistic set of elements commonly aligned to the Baldrige criteria that you can go online and learn about. So NIST, just Google NIST Baldrige criteria. It will give you resources to help you understand how you're doing as leaders. We'll give you resources to help you do create an organizational profile in each of the element areas that we're going to talk about. Really help you to understand where is the disconnects, because when we talk to our leaders, we talk to our workforce, we talk to our customers, we talk to our partners, oftentimes they're not experiencing the same type of or level of service. They're not clued in from a communication standpoint, so everyone is on the same page. Some part of the organization and customer base may only know about a very small silo of information based on what they're working on, right? And so excellence is about driving transparency. It's about driving orchestration. It's about driving a desire to continuously improve and innovate to create sustainability, continuity, and higher rates of performance internally as well as externally. So what do we need to be thinking about as we're going on this organizational excellence journey? And it's really at its core is driving a shared understanding and commitment to your core values and concepts. So the NIST Baldrige criteria will give you a construct to talk about the most important aspects of the vocabulary, the elements, and then how you internalize those discussions to help your workforce and your leaders and your customers and your partners understand what that means to them, and where you're moving to is really where the magic is, because this is the impetus behind the cultural and other changes that will occur as you move through this cycle. So core values and concepts, let's get everyone on the same page as to the vocabulary, the meaning, the distinctions, and even helping them to gauge how they're feeling about a particular element before you even begin going down the path of operational excellence. Or if you're already on the journey, it gives you an opportunity to re-baseline and bring and convene and get everyone on the same page before moving out on your next phase. So very useful from a collaboration, from a communication, from a baselining, and from an understanding of where the various portions of your organization feel that they're at, or what is their mindset around a certain element before you kick off a broader effort. How do we normally approach this? So I think when we've talked about Spotlight on Strategy before, we've spoken about starting with the end in mind, and it's not going to be any different in this conversation. You see number 7, results, and that's really what we do. We look forward and able to reverse engineer backwards the criteria or the roadmap forward to help us get there. And what you see in number 1 through 6 is the different elements that we need to be cognizant of and focusing on in order to heighten our excellence outcomes, and all that that contains for our organization. Because a result, if not done excellently, cannot get to a level of excellence in, or a high level of quality, or with a high level of engagement, etc. So the results and the outcomes that we're attempting to achieve directly affect how we approach each and every one of our other elements. Think of them as setting and managing expectations of how we orchestrate the entire program overall. If you're a change manager or a quality manager or an innovation manager, you may be used to also conducting a gap analysis. Where are we currently? Where are we going in the future? What are the bridges we need to build? And this construct absolutely will help you create the bridges moving forward, because harnessing and utilizing the Baldrige criteria from an operational excellence perspective helps you standardize the way that you're going to approach assessing, so that you can approach designing, developing, and implementing the changes that you need to going forward to achieve the outcomes and results that are most important to you, your client base, and your partners. So again, for those familiar with Baldrige, this may be a little bit of an overview, things you already know. And for those that are new to Baldrige Operational Excellence Framework, I think you'll find that it gives you a cohesive way forward to have the conversation with the various portions of your organization on the what, who, how, and how can we measure our success from different facets of organizational excellence to know that we're moving the needle where we most need to achieve the outcomes and results we said were most important. So again, the first thing, of course, from a quality and a organizational excellence perspective is our customers. We don't create products and services in a vacuum. We create them because we want to offer them within the marketplace to a set of customers that will grow, wax, wane, change over time, depending on where our organization is at in its maturity level and your organization's why. And so understanding your customers, engaging with your customers, harnessing this organizational construct to have a dialogue and conversation about what's most important to them is going to be the greatest, one of the greatest keys to achieving excellence outcomes in your organization. Oftentimes, we think that we know their requirements best. And we sometimes fail to have the critical conversations that would allow us to better understand where they're at, what they need, how they will harness it, what they will value more than anything. And so when we talk about an organization being stood up and run for value creation in a sustainable manner, and this is one of the key components, is having the critical conversation with the customer. There are Holdridge criteria assessment questions you can harness and use to help you have this dialogue. But again, it's really opening the channels of communication, engaging with them. Similar, if you use your partners or internal as your customers, it provides a phenomenal construct for you to engage, understand, again, where they're at, what's most important to them going forward, so you can drive a continuous value chain with them on their behalf, but also through the lens of the voice of the customer. The next is really being able to create that cultural impetus through our leadership. I think we've all been in conversations and read books about the difference between leaders and management and innovation and control, etc. In this case, what we're talking about from an excellence standpoint is truly leadership. Do we have not only the gravitas of the leader, but do we have the depth of commitment? Do we have the walking the talk? Do we have the engagement with the workforce and the clients and the customers? Do we have the behavioral focus and the modeling and the relationship building that it takes to be able to craft this sustainable, innovative organization that not only meets customer needs, but exceeds it? And so again, we're talking about creating a potential shift culturally in the mindset, the way that we operate with our customers and our partners and our workforce, and mostly how we show up and model these different behaviors. There is a phenomenal assessment on the Holdridge website, Holdridge Operational Excellence website, that allows an organization to assess how we're doing as leaders. And it really brings these concepts together. How are we showing up? What are the behaviors we're exhibiting? How are we engaging with the various stakeholders, with internal and external to our organizations? And how are we able to move the organizational forward through trust and transparency and communication, strategic alignment, orchestrating, etc., using and harnessing the power of all those various stakeholders to optimal levels. And the next is strategy. So now that we've understood and able to embody the voice of the customer, we have our leadership in place to be able to go the distance, if you will, throughout this journey. Now we have the strategy component that we need to consider. When we're looking at strategy from an operational excellence standpoint, it means that we're going to need to integrate it into the very fabric of our organization. So not only from an outcome and a results, but from an alignment, from a performance management and measurement perspective, from an analytics and data perspective, to the way we harness and engage and operationalize our workforce, how we're using our technological and process layers to optimize, etc. So strategy is really king and queen in this operational excellence arena, because it is the arbiter Should we, shouldn't we? Will we, won't we? How much, how far, when? And so having that strategic framework, that strategic foresight, the automation and intelligence behind that is really going to be key to helping your organization 10x, 50x, and 100x, because it will enable real-time analysis of where you are outcome and results oriented through the pairing and marrying up of a strategy with your performance measurement and management systems. Any person within the organization, theoretically, from an organizational excellence standpoint, should be able to see where you're at any given point in time across the different elements, but most important, through the lens of where you said you were going from an outcome and a results, be that a 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, 10 year. The next element we want to talk about is really about our workforce, the engine behind how we make change happen. One of the greatest opportunities within organizational excellence is this combining and the integrated of the three-legged stool of people, process, and technology. And workforce is key, because if we cannot win the minds, hearts, and hands of our workforce through the mechanisms we're using to engage, prosper, recognize, create, optimize opportunities for their collaboration and contribution, we're not going to be able to get to 10x, 50x, 100x, because we'll have left behind, in some cases, the most important strategic asset that the organization has. Technology can take you very far. Process layers and the intelligence and the analysis will get you further. But if we don't have our workforce aligned, in line, and helping us to optimize, though, we will not be able to reach the outcomes and the results cohesively, and typically not to the extent that we would if we were able to garner and harness them to optimal levels. So I cannot stress this point enough, that the workforce, the culture, the mindset, the engagement, their ongoing, deep, and continued focus on optimizing the organization using this construct is paramount to its success. And the shift oftentimes organizations will have to make is delegating, empowering, supporting from a manager to a workforce perspective, and creating leaders across the organization that may not have a certain title. So we're, in essence, even in a hierarchical organization, flattening the hierarchy, if you will, from a layer perspective when we think about how we're harnessing our workforce. It doesn't mean we don't have layers of leadership. It doesn't mean we don't have an organizational hierarchy. It doesn't mean we don't have stratas of workforce populations that have expertise in certain areas. What it means is that we're able to better harness from an ideation, an innovation, an operationalizing and innovating standpoint, how we harness their expertise and how we empower, how we engage, what are the constructs that we use to move from ideation to implementation of an innovation. That's what's most important. We need to break down the barriers of communication, of collaboration, of integration, of moving something from here to here to there based on a title or based on a role, and be able to, through operational excellence, harness the expertise, the ideas, the ingenuity, and the innovation that exists within our workforce. The next is operations. And we can only get there if we've created the outcomes and the results that we want to be achieving. That if we've created the strategic framework to follow, if we have clear vision of our harnessing our voice of the customer, and if we have a leadership set and a workforce that's ready to take on this new operational up tempo and often new ways of doing business. So we talk about change fatigue, we talk about innovation fatigue, we talk about other organizational constraints that may not allow us to get to 10x. And it's, again, through that prior elements that we talked about, how do we keep the momentum? How do we craft a change so that we do not get to a place of change and innovation fatigue? How can we create an up tempo where we may move in sprints so that we can go further faster for a time period? We can plan, do, check, act, or plan, do PDSA versus PDCA, where we're really looking at how we did in parallel with what we did and examining how we could do it better continuously. And so using agile frameworks, agile methodologies in order to engage our workforce, engage our leadership, engage how we create a portfolio of products and services, et cetera, really helps us move to excellence within the operations area. It is about creating defense in depth from an operational resilience standpoint. We need to be cognizant of not only the technology layer, but the process layer, as well as the governance and compliance constructs that we use. And again, we only get there if we can start with the end in mind and reverse engineer back through the lens of excellence. What does that outcome and results mean from an excellence standpoint? What is the play for us? Then how do we reverse engineer defense in depth to ensure we have continuity, ensure we have high availability, ensure we have resiliency, not only from a technological standpoint, but from an operations standpoint and a process standpoint. So those concepts of defense in depth from a controlling for outcomes perspective is key to help us design, develop, and field this internally as well as externally. And again, you're going to be harnessing all the prior elements we talked about to enable you to be able to get to the point to field with the right level of robustness this operations future state. The next is the enablers. And when we think about enablers, it's about our knowledge management systems. It's about our innovation systems. It's about if we think of it in the terms of the life cycle, how we're doing competitive analysis, how are we doing ideation, how are we creating strategic foresight, how are we engaging with our customers and our partners and internally to create that product and service, that innovation portfolio, if you will, that is going to allow us to achieve the results and outcomes that we're shooting for from a 10x, 50x, or 100x. Cybersecurity, governance, compliance, et cetera. If we stop looking at these as constraints and we start changing our mindset from an excellence standpoint to what is the opportunity space here for us to turn this into an enabler? How can we think about this differently? How can we do this differently? How can we create value at every stage? And is this in direct correlation with an outcome and a results we said is most important to us at this time? So it's a phased approach. Organizational excellence does not happen overnight. It's a phased approach. We have a starting point. You're going to call, fire the gun to start the race. At some point, you're going to give yourself an outcome and results time horizon. You're going to chunk it into different milestones and phases. And then because you put in enablers such as performance management, performance measurement, analytics, other type of operational and process value adds internally and externally with your customers and your partners, are going to, again, be able to see it in real time where you're at, given the promises that you made in those results and outcomes, not only internally, but as externally as well. And so this is a huge mindset and culture change here, because what it does is it makes transparent issues within the organization. It helps to uncover systemic problems. It requires us to do root cause analysis. It requires us to move to a deeper level of truth and trust. It requires us to change the way that we examine governance and what we would consider pain points and challenges and issues. It requires us to do and engage in lessons learned. It requires us to do continuous improvement and continuous innovation. So this enabler area is huge, because the more strategically we can approach the performance management and measurement and analytics from a collection and analysis and reporting perspective, the greater our ability to, the quicker and greater our ability to identify when we have a problem, where is the problem located at, and then be able to go deep dive into causal analysis so that we can remedy it, because we don't want that process to derail our 10x, 50x, 100x. A lot of organizations get stuck here in the truth, trust, transparency creation of this real-time view of their organization. And there is fear, right? So going back to the how do we change our culture and our mindset, and this engagement of our human element from a leadership and a workforce perspective to combat fear of an issue or a challenge being discovered. If we use the lens of cybersecurity, we see that they hire bounty hunters, right? So it's the way we approach it. If we look at it from let's uncover as much as we can, and let's recognize and incentivize our workforce and our leadership for doing that, then that is the outcome and the results that we're going to be working towards. If we work from a fear model where we want to hide and sweep under the rug issues and challenges and pain points, they become systemic, and they disable, and they create silos, and they create strife, and they create all sorts of symptoms across the organization, so that we will not be able to reach our results and our outcome. Our quality levels will be down, our innovation levels will be down, etc. So this is key, these enablers and the commitment from the executive team, from the leadership team and the workforce to uncovering, as identifying first symptomatically what's going on, taking the time to do the causal analysis, and then getting behind that and prioritizing it through the lens of maximizing the outcome and results is key. I cannot state that with more robustness for you today. This aspect is the key to the greatest if you will, quantum leap that the organization can make in so many different ways, because it requires you to change your culture, change your mindset, and change the way that you approach a problem or a challenge to turn it into an opportunity to create value on an ongoing basis. It seems that would be a simple change, but in reality, it is going to the core of every person, every process, every integration, and every conversation that you have across your entire stakeholder base. And so I cannot emphasize that enough, that this is and can be the glue, the momentum, the motivating force, the elevator, if you will, for optimized performance, if you will, help to focus and create strength in this area. And again, the last that we mentioned when we open the session is results. It's up to you, organizational leaders, executives, workforce, customers, partners, how that's going to turn out. It's up to all of us to try to craft our organizations, our process, our technological layers, the way we approach this to maximize value and to optimize the whole. So I offer this framework to you today before we move in later September to the best practices around organizational excellence as shown within the industry today, so that you can understand the power of this framework, ways that you can harness it starting now, the conversations that you can begin to have within your organization, and the power that it brings to help you optimize outcomes, results, but also all of the organizational components that you use to create the fine products and services and portfolios that you field to your customer base. I so hope that this has been of service and of value to you today. Again, I am Dr. Rhonda Farrell, the CEO of Global Innovation Strategies, these success strategies rooting for you an excellence outcome. We'll join you again in just a short bit later in the month to bring you again the best practices and ways that industry has harnessed operational excellence to do phenomenal things across the globe.